Right, we're back on. We're recording again. I hope you all had a good break and a wee bite to eat. We're moving on now to item 10 on the agenda, which is the biggest, chunkiest item on the agenda today. It's East Ayrshire Performs. It's the outturn summary reports. Well, a few different officers are going to be contributing different parts of this big report, and we're starting with Joe McLaughlin, Chief Financial Officer. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. As you've just been told, it's the end of year report, so that report that tries to capture all of the financial information in the 1 year. It's been a heck of a year is the best way to describe it. I think it's, if you'll recall, in September last year, I brought the first report to you. It showed £6 million actual overspend, which I've left unchecked, and if spending plans were allowed to proceed, that would have taken the overspend to around £20 million. Cabinet, quite rightly, at that point, approved a series of controls. We changed the financial regulations. They sought and requested recovery plans from relevant services. Throughout the year, they injected more funds, and I'm pleased to say that with the efforts of budget holders and heads of service, and through the good financial management of elected members, we have a much improved position at the year end. It doesn't say we're at the woods, but it shows that in terms of taking a grip of something that was substantial, we have done that successfully, and I'm grateful to colleagues for the work they've done. So we've ended the year in a position where, if we strip out services and just go to the central team, the council ended the year about £700,000 of a surplus. But I had to ask Cabinet yesterday to allocate an additional £1.9 million to the Health and Social Care Partnership in order to bring them to a balanced position, and I'll touch on that in a moment. In terms of those recovery plans, you'll see the report, the accompanying report that contains those recovery plans, and I'll touch on them too. And there's been a series of draws from repairs and renewals, and I asked Cabinet yesterday to put another £1 million into repairs and renewals in recognition of the challenges or pressures that may flow this year. Your paragraph 13 just picks up on the IJB. So way back in Q1, it flagged up a potential £10 million overspend. Recovery Plan 1 and Recovery Plan 2 were then created, and they were monitored as went through the year. Recovery Plan 2 has been achieved in full. Recovery Plan 1 remains active, remains live, and is being progressed by colleagues within the Health and Social Care Partnership. At that point, in January this year, Cabinet approved the transfer of the injection of a further £4 million of funding into the partnership to try and bring it back online. And we thought that would be sufficient. However, despite the best efforts of all of officers, it ended the year £1.9 million overspent. You know, as part of the budget report, Council has asked for a specific direction to be presented to the Council from the Integration Joint Board, which will be helpful in managing the 2025-26 spend. But it shows the level of challenge and the depth of demand that exists within the Health and Social Care Partnership. That Council has set aside a budget of around £130 million, but at the same time this year put in an extra £6 million of funding to that place. So paragraph 16 picks up on education. It's a service that at the beginning of the year had a projected overspend of around £8.5 million. It's ended the year balanced, a slight overspend of £61,000, which against a budget, against a budget of £140 million is neither here nor there. So an incredibly good story in terms of education. Cabinet on the 15th of January injected £2.2 million of additional funds into the budget to support the transition to break even, and it's been done well. It's a budget that has four main parts to it in terms of the pressure points. Early years, which has been resolved. There's challenges around probationers, and I think with a fair wind this year, the service should be fine with probationers. ASN Transport, you know that the Chief Education Officer is leading a working group on that change. You've seen a report with further reports to come. And in terms of HQ absence cover, or the absence cover that takes place within schools, then we've had really successful meetings with head teachers, secretary head teachers in particular, and we've devised and designed a new process and a new plan in terms of taking that forward, where we see shared and collaborative working to try and bring that budget back in line. So at the end of the year, break even, not carrying anything forward in terms of an overspend, and active steps being taken to either resolve or extinguish some of those pressures, recognising that ASN transport will continue into 25-26, and you'll hear about that at the next East Ayrshire Performance Report. But generally, grateful to colleagues and happy for the work that's taken place in terms of education. Paragraph 21 picks up communities and economy in the suite of services that sit under the Deputy Chief Executive. That was a service that consolidated at about £1.2 million of an overspend at Q1. They were the first to produce a recovery plan, and at the end of the year, it's £723,000 under budget. That masks a level of overspend within specific services, but taken as a whole, as Richard has done, then it's a £723,000 underspend position. Challenges within cleaner communities and also in waste, but a good piece of work being done there too. In wellbeing, as I said, 2 recovery plans, £10 million overspent, £1.9 million injected at the year end in Cabinet yesterday, and so a break-even position. But you'll see as we go into the accompanying report, some really substantial pressures within community care. So when we take account of the year-end position and following Cabinet's approval yesterday of providing another £1.9 million to the IGIB, it takes the uncommitted balance to 2.03%, as noted at paragraph 30. We're asked to maintain a minimum of 2%. If we try and make it between 2 and 4, we try and hit 4, but we're down at 2% because of the funds that have been passed across the budgets last year. It shows in terms of education and in terms of communities and economy that it's not just about injecting funds, it's about fixing the strategic issues that are taking place within budgets, while recognising the demands that are placed within them. And on that journey, I think we've had some successes, particularly in education and in communities and economy. Wellbeing remains a real challenge for us as we go forward. The housing revenue account at paragraph 33 ended the year about £3 million underspent. That was following a draw from their balances. It takes the cumulative balance on the housing revenue account to £21.5 million, so substantially more than the general fund uncommitted balance, which is surprising. But as you know, the head of housing and communities has all of that £21.5 million set aside for commitments associated with housing improvements and house building as we go forward. Paragraph 34 picks up the capital report and some of the issues within there. The Dunlop Early Childhood Centre costs are around £410,000 more than the anticipated budget. Paragraph 34 sets out the reasons for that. Galston Local Office, as I said to Cabinet yesterday, grateful to the Head of Economic Growth for providing capital funding that at their disposal from UK Shared Prosperity Fund, and recognising the skills and learning that will take place within the Galston Local Office. Injected funds into there that means that despite the contract for the build being £282,000 over budget, there are substantial funds in there that allows me and David, and with Cabinet's approval yesterday, reallocate some of that funding to paragraph 39, and that's why you can see that link between Galston and paragraph 36 and paragraph 39. Palace Theatre, Cabinet yesterday approved a £1 million draw from repairs and renewals to provide funding that would allow the completion of exploratory works and enhance the frontage of the planned works, particularly around that pavement part towards the road, and some steps going on there too. The Kilmarnock Leisure Centre Trust, this is the Galleon, paragraph 41. The Council gave a commitment some years ago to provide a financial guarantee should the Galleon Trust end the year with a deficit that required the full utilisation of the reserves. And after, even after that, still had a deficit. That happened at March. The end of year position was an overspend of £135,000. The Board of Trustees used £55,000 from the reserves, and they've asked Cabinet yesterday to allocate £80,000 in order that they can end the year and essentially end existence in a break-even position. Paragraph 42 to 46 is a section of this report that comes in at year end. It's about the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act, or RIPSA, and it sets out the background for that and highlights that during the year there were no requirements to use the RIPSA legislation. The subsequent sections of the report, starting at paragraph 47 and beyond, are better picked up, Chair, in the next accompanying sections of the report, and I'm happy to stop there and take any questions that committee may have.
Thank you, Joe. I'll let to members, it's there's other people going to come in with other sections of the report, which will throw up even more different questions. I'm happy to take questions. Councillor Richardson first.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Peter. Joe, just a quick question about the further 1.9 million committed to the IJB yesterday. I know the IJB are in desperate need of funds, but is it the case that as soon as we transfer that 1.9 million to the IJB that we lose all control of those funds? We can't put any stipulations on that money at all. I'm obviously thinking of Ward 2, my own patch, and the Morven Centre that's in desperate need of funds. And I'm thinking, you know, the IJB could no longer fund it. We've gave the IJB another 1.9 million. Is there no way you can put a one-off stipulation on a small part of those monies?
Through you, Chair, the 1.9 provided yesterday was to bring it to the social care element of the health and social care partnership, and I'm sorry for explaining it like that, but the social care element of the health and social care partnership, bringing that back to a balanced position. Had we instructed or directed the IJB to use it for the example you give, then that would have still left an overspend at the end of the year, which would have come back to the council, in recognising that it would be a social care element requiring additional funding. So yesterday was about giving the 1.9 to bring the council's part of this to a balanced position.
Thanks, Peter.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Any other questions? Not yet. We're waiting to go through the different sections of the report. Have you more to next part, Joe? Thank you.
So we're at page 189, members, and this is the usual format that you see in respect of education. I've gone through the reasons why, but what you're seeing here, as you're seeing most sections, is the grey box at the bottom, and that's because as a council, where a service underspends at year end, they're allowed to carry forward that underspend and earmark it for either further use in subsequent years or to add it to their uncommitted balance. And that's what you're seeing here. You're seeing the Head of Education earmarking some of that funding to be used for years. The important part here is on page 190. It's where you see the Education Recovery Plan that was presented and approved by Cabinet on the 15th of January. A recovery plan that sought to make management actions totalling £4.020 million. And I'm delighted to say that all but £90,000 of that has been achieved. Now, a couple of caveats here. Some of this is about non-recurring work, and so I need to continue to focus on the budget. What I would say, though, is there is incredible collaboration taking place within the service and across services. So we had a really successful meeting with secondary head teachers the other day, and you know, recognising that their first job is to be the head teacher of their high school, but similarly they recognise too that they are senior officers of the council, and so they have agreed that they will meet with Linda and I 4 times a year, coinciding with these DESH reforms, so that they can both input to the financial process, but also bring perhaps other options that they would have on a local basis that could be used on a much wider basis. Within Finance and ICT at page 191, you see the earmarking taking place. And if I can just pick up the 2 boxes, you'll see Scottish Welfare Fund. That's just a timing issue of the payments that are due to be made after 31st of March. But you'll see here BMK Store, and you'll see that in my section and also in David's section, £410,000. This is a store, the storage facility that houses our archives, it houses election equipment and materials too. The lease was up for renewal and an option to buy. And because we need that store, David quite rightly opted to buy that. Instead of that becoming a capital asset and being funded by borrowing, David and I agreed to use balances to purchase it and use cash to buy it, which meant that we're not incurring interest costs as well. So again, just as we're asking you to make decisions, we're also trying to find different ways of working here so that we're actually not putting any more burden onto any pressure points as well. Page 192 is communities and economy. And I said £723,000 of an underspend. But you can see from the box and from the red and amber and greens there that Ayrshire Roads Alliance has significant pressures, £1 million overspent. Majority of that is to do with additional expenditure on primary and secondary transport. You know, as elected members, that a previous report was submitted to Cabinet and approved that will make changes in terms of subsidised places within buses with effect from August this year. So again, this will taper down. There will still be a pressure in primary and secondary transport. As part of the budget, we added further funds into that budget, but we just monitor it. But as I said, you approved a previous report which will show a tapering off of that pressure as we go forward. Within housing and communities, we're seeing a £500,000 or £56,000 less than budget. So housing and communities breaking even, but you can see from the narrative there a lot of things going on in that budget. Cleaner communities under pressure, waste under pressure, and being offset by a whole number of things. And that's why you see the DCE taking that strategic approach by consolidating all services and having all services working together to try and support each other, which is really successful. Page 193 is the recovery plan for communities and economy. It was the first recovery plan you saw, and £1.9 million, 1.861 of options, 241, everything bar £241,000 has been achieved. And again, it shows this was done in January. All of these were done in January. It shows the level of work that's been done to try and bring the budget back into line. Again, some of these recurring, some non-recurring, and so real demands and the pressure, and it's a service that's dealing with an inherent overspend that they're trying to work down and chip away at. So as governance and scrutiny, I draw your attention then to page 194, and it's to the wellbeing or the social care element of health and social care. And what you can see here is a 5.869 of an overspend that accounts for the £4 million council gave earlier, and that 1.869 of an overspend. And when you glance at the figures, you see children and families underspending by nearly £1.2 million. Service strategy, £500,000 under. Out with placements is up, but you can see the community care, the sustaining our service users in the community, £6.5 million overspent. And that's despite a whole series of works taking place that will produce benefits today, but some will produce benefits in the next year and so. But it's a point where in the budget report I made specific mention that decisions from the IJB and from that direction that we're waiting for from Craig, that will bring decisions back to members here, to elected members in the council, to take decisions about how we close that gap, whether you elect to provide additional funding to the IJB or whether you seek to make changes to the profile of services in terms of the health and social care partnership. But one to watch. And as we go through the year, members, I'm just put on notice that when the period one report or the quarter one report comes to you in September, you will likely see an overspend in wellbeing as it continues. Within central services, we can see the underspend there, but it's a timing thing. You can see the box at the bottom that shows that the funds are held at 31st of March, but they'll be expended this year. A few things in there just to draw your attention to. We received about £800,000 more than we had modelled in terms of the reduction in employees' superannuation costs. We thought it was going to come in at £12 million. It came in at 12.8. And so Cabinet, yes, it was asked and kindly gave approval to use £800,000 for the school's property pledge, so that they can continue to do works on the upkeep and fabrication of our schools, which is helpful. If we can just move on to well, I'm happy to stop there, Chair, and take any questions for a move on.
Thank you, Joe. So we're looking at the revenue stuff. It's on the main reports, page 189 to page 198. Yeah. Happy to take questions. I'll let the members, if there's anything in that chunk of the report you want to bring up, questions or comments on revenue. Councillor Sangster.
Thank you, Chair. Just around community care, I know we're obviously we're now in this kind of situation where we're trying not to have people admitted to hospital, and we're trying to keep them in the community, which is obviously adding to, you know, the financial burden for the council. Does the NHS have any financial input on that to prevent the hospital admissions, or do we basically pay for everything, or do the NHS have any input in terms of, you know, financially?
Through you, Chair. So if I can describe what the 2014 Act that created IJBs was meant to do, which was about integration. So maintaining as many people in the communities rather than hospitals. So when they go into hospital, then the plan was, as IJBs were created, there would be more supports provided in the communities rather than in beds in hospital or in the acute, the acute side of hospital. And that the legislation had a descriptor called, if this works to the way it should work in the IJBs, then there should be a release of a set-aside budget, and the set-aside budget was the budget within acute. As you're using less beds, then there is a saving to health that can then be passed on to the IJBs. Sadly, that bit hasn't happened because the beds are still busy and the community is busy too. So that real, you know, utopian part about grasping the set-aside budget has never materialised.
Thank you, Councillor Sangster. And Joe for the reply. No other questions? Anything online? No. Back to you, Joe. We can do the next chunk. Yeah.
Thank you. So we're in council initiatives. We're on page 199. And I suppose just want to say that, you know, some of the message I'm giving is fairly downbeat, but it doesn't mean to be. We're managing it and through your support. But page 199 shows just some of the good things that the council and you are doing. So in terms of the extension of financial inclusion support, the budget's £191,000, almost away, but those staff have created or generated £970,000 of financial gains by supporting 195 individuals receive recurring increases in benefits from DWP. Clothing grants to 3 and 4 year olds, 367 awards were made, impacting favourably around just under 380 families. And you've changed that. This was previous year's ones. This was the £50 level. You increased that to £75 in February. So making a real difference there. Half price school meals, £300,000, 317,000 meals produced. But more than that, what we're seeing is a real shift and a real increase in the number of paid meals, going up by over 200,000. So we're seeing young people staying in school and buying the meal for £1.08. So it's working really well. That part too. Pupil Equity Fund, it is as noted, Chair, we're on page 202. It shows £4 million passed to head teachers. We're a clearinghouse for this, comes from Scottish Government straight to our schools. And that is been fully spent, £3.9 million spent at 31st of March. If I can beg your indulgence, just continue. On page 204, alternative delivery models, just to conclude the revenue part. So this is where we pick up information around Ayrshire Roads Alliance and the Leisure Trust, the East Ayrshire Leisure Trust. So in that strategic delivery element, it's been underspent all year, but you're seeing the local delivery elements for East and South Ayrshire Council overspending. It's due to shortfalls in income, a loss of some parking income, and additional winter maintenance costs across the board. The table below shows the capital element, and it's there we begin to pick up, quite importantly, just the number of road slips that East Ayrshire has experienced in the last year, page 72, sorry, 205. And it's there we can see that, you know, the B713 in Sorn, the A70 in Lugar, and in Lop and Colglen slip, it's caused a real pressure for the service during the year. It's why the service sought access to and was given approval to repairs and renewals to fix those real challenging pieces of work. It gives an update on the refurbishment of car parks and also around resurfacing, showing 100% of carriageway and footway resurfacing is complete, and the same with the street lighting programme. And in terms of the Ayrshire Leisure Trust, break-even position, slight £30,000 overspent, but that's nothing in comparison to the size of the budget, and so a really successful end of year for the Leisure Trust. In Treasury, page 209 is as noted, Chair. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Joe. I think we can take this in chunks. If any questions on council initiatives, page 198, 199, if of any questions, comments. Lots of good work going on there. Civic Pride and Temp Post. Councillor Cogley.
Yes, I think just one point I'd like to make in relation to temporary additional posts and the problems that I know David and his team have had in recruitment, and that's because the posts have been temporary as opposed to permanent, as I understand it. So, and I think that's a note for ourselves that if we are asking for additional spend, to make it worthwhile, it really has got to be a permanent position that we're offering, because there are real problems with recruitment otherwise. So just wanted to flag that one there. Thanks.
As a point, I take the point. I would just add that this was temporary funding, so there's perhaps a further discussion take place, because you wouldn't put a permanent post into temporary funding, but it's something that isn't elected members. If that's the priority area, then clearly you would task officers with going away and finding permanent money. But recognising that across the piece, it's not something that's generally done, but certainly we could take that on board.
Thank you, Joe. Anyone else on council initiatives? I think it's to our credit that the council came together and we've cross-party, we've done the half-price school meals and we're keeping that going, and the provision of the clothing grants for the wee ones going into ECCs, and a wee £50 clothing grant up, kit out a toddler to go to the ECCs. I think it was great work. I'm worried about the cost and how we manage to keep that going in the future, of course. Any other questions, comments? Move on to the next part is PEF funding, which is page 200 to 202. If anyone's got any questions on PEF funding, there's a whole list of different schools there and how they have spent their funding. Happy to take any questions or comments. Councillor Crawford.
Page 205, it says, you come to a flood scheme, await potential claim submission from the contractor. What's that for?
I'm not sure that's the PEF section, but we've covered that before, Councillor Crawford. The bottom line is that during the carrying out of the new Cumnock flood works, and we're in public sessions, so I appreciate I can only give you the headlines, but in essence there was a number of events occurred which had the impact of delaying the programme, and the contract makes provision for how that gets dealt with. However, the contractor is of the view that their loss is something in the order of £2 million more than what we're prepared to accept. And we've had that looked at by both the externally appointed project manager and in preparation for any proceedings that might yet follow by an independent expert. And we have advised the company that we don't think, we think the worst case scenario for us is a fraction of that amount. So there is no scope to have settled this. The position as the final what's going out my head, but the final statement, if you like, on the contract position, the final payment, if you like, was issued last August. And without getting into all the legal elements, they've got up to 3 years, unfortunately, to decide whether or not to bring a claim for any additional compensation. So it's entirely in the hands of that company what happens next. And all we can do is continue to be prepared if and when they decide they want to pursue a claim, to be ready to defend that.
Thank you, David. It's right. We're on page, what are we? Page 200, 201, 202 about PEF funding, which is there's a good list of all the different schools and page 201. And I believe the PEF funding will come to an end at some point. No.
Through you, Chair, from my understanding, the commitment to provide PEF funding is for the duration of this Scottish Parliament. So after that, we'll await and see what happens.
So we need to see what happens after the Scottish elections to 2026, if we'll have more PEF funding after that. Okay, thank you. The next part is alternative delivery models. Page 203 to page 207, if there's any questions or comments on alternative delivery models. Any questions, any comments? No one online? Okay, no questions just now. Next part after that is Treasury part, which is page 208, 209, but Treasury. Have we any questions or comments on the Treasury part? Elected members. Right, the next part on the East Ayrshire Performance Report looks at the capital programme, and we're going to Simon Bell strategically is going to present that part of the report. Thank you, Simon.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Good afternoon, members. The capital programme continues to face ongoing pressures on affordability due to construction inflation and the cost of borrowing. We're closely monitoring projects to ensure that essential scopes aligned with affordability caps. As usual, I won't go through the report in great detail, but I'll highlight some key points for a selection of projects. There's approximately £10 million of construction contracts currently on site, and these include the Galston Library and Office project, which is well advanced, with the building now wind and watertight and internal works ongoing. The St Sophia's Primary School Ennerfit refurbishment, which is nearing completion, with pupils planned to return for the new term in August. And the Kilmarnock multi-storey car park demolition, which has faced a number of challenges impacting on programme and is now scheduled to complete mid-August. Projects at a detailed design stage include Kilmores Primary School, where tenders to replace the existing dining hall and kitchen were issued in May and are due to be returned late June, with works planned to start later in the summer. At Stuart Academy, technical designs are well advanced for construction of the new extension and internal alterations, with tenders due to be issued over the summer period. And with the Palace Theatre as part of Cultural Kilmarnock, works progressing with the external consultants and preferred contractor to reach a final commercial position to allow a contract to be awarded. The Council's also received agreement from UK Government to extend the funding deadline to the end of March 2027. Projects at the earlier stage of development include the Ayrshire Engineering Park and Ayrshire Manufacturing Investment Corridor, where tenders for Phase 1 infrastructure works are due to be returned later this month, and it's anticipated that a contract could be awarded in August with a start on site by the autumn. With Doon Valley Community Campus, works commenced on the development of revised proposals for refurbishment and extension of the existing school. And it's expected that the first phase of works to upgrade areas in the leisure centre could start in the autumn. And finally, at the Galleon Centre, a programme and cost plan have now been issued by the delivery partner Alliance Leisure, with a formal appointment expected in the near future. And the construction programme for that project will be based on maintaining an operational facility, and it's expected that works could commence during 2026 with completion in 2027. So thanks, Chair. Just a brief summary of some key projects, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Simon. Councillor Cogley has a question.
Yeah, Simon, thank you very much, and also particularly for the progress on the works within my ward, which are both nearing completion, which is very exciting. I noticed that the River Irvine bank stabilisation at that same area is being looked at again, and I seem to remember this was something we were looking at and did quite a lot of remedial works on about 10 years ago. Could you just give us an update on that, please?
Yeah, thanks through you, Chair. I'm actually not aware of kind of previous works that had happened there. The ongoing development of this project's been taking quite a bit of time. I think maybe spoken about this at a previous committee. It's around about the complexity of the technical engineering solution that's required there, and of course trying to coincide these works with all the various authorities that you need permission from, like SEPA and the Rivers Trust. There's also fish spawning season and all sorts of other complications that impact in being able to undertake the work. So we're working closely with specialist consultants just now to find the optimal solution for stabilising the bank in terms of limited impact on the river and the cost associated with that. And that's why we're saying it's probably going to be summer next year before we actually get on with that work. But in the interim, there's monitoring taking place on a regular basis to ensure that there's no significant movement of the banking, and we're getting that reassurance through the consultants in the meantime. Thanks, yeah.
Is it just the southern side of the riverbank that's that you're concerned about?
So it's the southern side that's kind of affecting the sort of banking area around the AAA arena there. It looks like when we do works to that bank, because that will actually narrow the river, if you like, we might have to increase, we might need to do works on the opposite bank so that the width of the river doesn't actually change, because if you narrow the river, it increases the flow. So this is just the design work that we're going through just now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cogley and Simon, for the reply. We've Councillor Sangster in the room, and then we're going to Councillor Lennox online.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just referring to page 212 around Willowbank ASN. I'm pleased to see that obviously the capacity issues are being looked at. I just want to know the additional modular accommodation. Is this a short-term solution, a medium-term solution, or is it going to be a long-term solution? If we could maybe get a wee bit more information on that. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks through you, Chair. No, we would see this as a long-term solution. You know, despite it being modular, that's just a kind of mechanism to be able to do off-site manufacturing, which could enable us to actually have a facility a bit quicker than actually building something on site. But in terms of the quality of the product, it's not like a temporary facility. It's just that it's being constructed in a modular basis. So we would see it as a long-term solution. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Simon. So these are only the Portacarmens that we had in the 1980s. This is much better than that. Linda, you want to come in the same subject?
Yes, through you, Chair, and Councillor Sangster, just by way of additional reassurance, you'll know that we're bringing the ASN review in its fuller form on the 18th of June. We're clearly on the understanding that we have significant issues around about capacity at both Willowbank and Hillside, so around about our young people with the most complex needs. So we're actually amidst reprofiling other areas of the service, so that should assist, hopefully alongside the additional modular accommodation, in resolving some of that issue, because I know that it's the longitudinal part of that, Councillor Sangster, that you'll be concerned about. So, and just to give reassurance, absolutely not the porta cabins of the 80s. They're almost really difficult to spot. We've got several across the authority that operate really, really well. But I think that's in addition as well to some playground works, etc., that we're going to be doing at Willowbank in the very near future. So just by way of further reassurance, Councillor Sangster.
Thank you, Simon and Linda, for those replies. I'm going to Councillor Lennox now online.
Thanks, Chair. I think Councillor Todd might have been in front of me.
Aye, go ahead, Councillor Lennox. Councillor Todd's giving you the thumbs up. I'll go to him next.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Simon. Maybe just to help me with my own understanding in terms of the demolition of the Auchinleck Academy. I don't see that mentioned in this section of the report. Is that because it's of magnitude to warrant getting mentioned here, or is it in the wrong section of the report?
Yeah, through you, Chair. I'm just trying to think. I'm sure it's in the report at some point. Can't quite see what page it is, but happy to give an update on that just now. So we've received tenders for the demolition works, which are currently being assessed, carrying out those pre-demolition works that we need to do around about asbestos surveys and asbestos removal. I think there's the last ecology survey to be carried out there to check for nesting birds and any bats, and we're hoping to start the demolition works probably late August, early September. Thanks, Chair.
That's great. Thanks for that update. And apologies if I've missed that in the report.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Councillor Lennox. I think we've found it in page 213. I missed it as well. Councillor Todd, and apologies for shuffling up the order. Who's coming in first and second? Councillor Todd.
Oh, no problems, Peter. No problems. Thanks, convener. Simon, I know you're as frustrated as me, but years ago, the Indian ambassador and the Indian consul general in Edinburgh come down, presented East Ayrshire with a bust of Gandhi. And that bust, a lovely bronze bust, and that was going to be sited at Patna Primary School, because if nobody knows in the meeting that Patna was in East Ayrshire, was based on an entrepreneur who was born and raised in Patna, came back to Scotland and opened up mines here. That's how Patna came about. So that's the connection, Patna in India, Patna in East Ayrshire. And this bus was gifted to us years ago. And I know Simon's frustrated, but seemingly there's been a bit of vandalism that's going to stop getting the bus set up. Now, I know that Provost Claire Leach has been approached by the Indian Consul General's Department about when this is going to be put on display. And I think she's wanting to get a wee special day set up for the Consul General when it does go up. Is there any further movement on that, Simon? Thanks.
Yeah, thanks through you, Chair. Completely agree, Councillor Todd. It's been frustrating. It's taken an awful long time. This goes back to pre-COVID, and in fact, COVID got in the way of actually taking this one forward. And then we had issues at Patna Primary School with the roof, which had to be replaced. To bring you up to speed, there had been vandalism, which was stopping us taking this one forward. That work's being undertaken over the summer. So once we've got that finished, I can link with the Provost to get things moving forward and have this, the bust of Gandhi installed. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Councillor Todd. I come in with one myself. I'm glad to see that the work of demolition of multi-storey is now moving ahead after a few hiccups and delays, and including finding bats in it at one point, and we had to remove the bats. So I'm glad that's going ahead. For the future of the site, I'm wondering, we did do a consultation with the public, and there was 2 or 3 various options about what would be there after the demolition is complete. Do you know, Simon, if any decisions were made on that public consultation, or if it's a matter of waiting on funding to move forward after the demolition's finished?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Our colleagues in ARA have taken forward a funding bid with Transport Scotland for works to the vacant site. We had been expecting an announcement sort of a few weeks ago. I'm not sure if anything's come through. I've actually been on leave and just back this week, so I haven't heard if there's been an announcement or not on that. I can certainly find out. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Simon. Any other questions on this part of the report, which is the capital programme? Page 210 to 215. Any other questions or comments? Okay, we'll move on to the next part of the report, which is health and safety. David Doran.
Thanks, Chair. Good afternoon, members. The Health and Safety Performance Report before members covers the years 24-25. If I could begin by drawing members' attention to the top of page 225 of the summary report, but noted that it was 2,499 non-reportable incidents reported to Health and Safety team. This represents a reduction of 107 incidents when compared to the previous year. Incidents reportable to HSE over that period have increased slightly by 4. As I've advised the last 3 East Ayrshire performance reports to this committee, Chair, this decrease in non-reportable incidents is mainly due to a decrease in the number of violence and aggression incidents in educational establishments, which have gone down by 239 incidents when compared to the year 23-24, as can be seen at the bottom of page 226. It's reassuring to note, Chair, that we've seen a consistent reduction in violence and aggression reporting in educational settings since period 3. I should also point out that the reduction in reporting is modest and it's also consistent. Had it been significant and abrupt, I would be concerned about possible underreporting, but I don't believe that that's the case here, Chair. I think these figures are genuine figures, and there is work that's been done on the ground to reduce these figures that are actually driving these consistent reductions that we're seeing. Finally, as set out in page 184 of the Coven report, there are a total of 3,954 unannounced inspections carried out across the Council's higher risk activities. That works out at 329 inspections each month. These form the cornerstone of the robust safety management arrangements this Council has in place across those high risk activities, Chair. And that concludes the health and safety report. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, David. Health and safety reports 224, 225, 226. I've actually jumped one. I'm going to go out and do the people section next. I've shuffled that again. Any questions or comments on the health and safety pages 224 to 226 for David? I was shy that day. No one online. Any questions on health and safety? Okay, thank you, David, for presenting that part of the report. We'll go to the previous section, which I jumped, which is people, and that's page 216 with Amanda Lowe, people and culture.
Thanks, Chair, and afternoon, members. Apologies for the constant coughing. The people pages summary starts on page 216 with the statistics for absence being in page 217. For this period, there's been a decrease compared to the same period last year in the instance of absence. However, there has been an increase in the number of days lost, therefore resulting in a rise of 0.43 work days lost. The top 5 reasons for this year compared to last year, the top 4 remain exactly the same. And the 5th reason this year is stress work related. Last year it was colds and flus. There has been a rise
of equivalent to 3.68 days lost in short-term absence, which we're currently doing a deep dive and analysis of. And the long-term absence has decreased by equivalent of 3.25 days. We have put in place individual action plans for all cases that are long-term absence, so I'm hopeful that this tighter monitoring is helping towards this reduction. The occupational health activities on page 218, members will remember that we changed provider, so there was a decrease in that transition period, and there's also a decrease in the number of appointments given that we've now brought the early interventions in-house for the pilot that we started in January. Jumping to page 220, members will see the breakdown of jobs and training fund as at 31st of March 2025. The council had 108 young people on post, which was an increase of 2 in the last quarter. Would note that the recruitment linked to this programme finished on the 31st of March, and at that point, 41% of the recruits through jobs and training had moved on to positive destinations. We'll continue to monitor and track those that still in post, and with the new round, jobs and training second round, we have started the approval of posts and the advertising. Page 221 shows the leavers across the council, and these are for various reasons. It could be end of contract, retirement, resignation. In the period, the financial year of last year, I would also note that 23 employees left the council on the grounds of ill health retirement, with a further 22 in the grounds of capability due to ill health. The payroll activities detailed on page 221 with an overview of our communications in 222 and our organisational development in 222 and 223, and happy to take any questions. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Amanda. I'm glad to see you've stopped coughing for a wee while. Any questions or comments on this part of the report, the people section, page 216 to 223? Councillor Cogley.
Amanda, thanks very much for the report. Now, I know you've been working hard on absence and absence reduction, and the programme, I seem to recollect, was brought in partway through the year, and it was very specifically focused in one part of the council. How soon will we know what the impact of the new measures are, and when will we be spreading the initiative elsewhere within East Ayrshire, please? Thanks, Amanda.
To you, Chair. So we've obviously got a session with yourselves for scrutiny session in August, beginning of September. I think it's actually 1st of September, so we're currently preparing for that. We are doing quarterly monitoring reports. We have spread that initiative across the council with the introduction of the additional posts, and we're currently out recruiting a 4th post for that team. So work is ongoing. We are starting to see, it's such a vast piece of work and no one size fits all, but we are starting to see not maybe light at the end of the tunnel yet, but we're starting to see where there is an impact. So for example, within communities and economy, for this month is the 3rd month in the row that personal stress has not been the top reason for being off sick, where we've been particularly concentrating on. The however is the absence rates have not went down significantly, so we just need to look at that. So, but progress has been made, albeit it feels slow because it's like changing a juggernaut roundabout. But we'll have we've got a session with yourselves on the 1st of September, and then we plan to go back to Cabinet in October with an update.
Thanks very much. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you. Councillor Sangster.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just looking at the top 5 reasons for absence, the top 2 are personal stress and musculoskeletal. I'm just wondering, are employees, is it easy for employees to self-refer for counselling, for example, for their personal stress and for their physio, for example? because I'm conscious that there probably are a lot of people who do go through personal stress and have musculoskeletal injuries, but might not actually be off sick as well. They might actually power through and come to their work. So, you know, I'm just wondering, is it fairly easy for the employees to gain access to these, you know, these people?
Through you, Chair. Yeah, I'll take the counselling first. So our counselling service is through VivUp platform. So it's available 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. You can do it either by live chat, you can do it by telephone, or you can do face-to-face, whatever's required. Should we require more specialist counselling, we do provide that through Beautiful Inside and Out. So we can make appointments easily on that, and everything's on the intranet for people to follow what the flow chart is, how to do it, to access. Physio, similar, it can be a referral through your manager. We do have quite a high uptake in physio appointments, but those two top reasons, not just compared to last year, there's consistently were two top reasons. So that's why the additional capacity we've got in the team are doing that deep dive into it. And we're going to look at physio a wee bit different for a musculoskeletal to see if we can make it mandatory that everybody goes to physio if it is a musculoskeletal that they're off sick with.
That's lovely, thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. And I take it the people that are doing physical jobs, like for bin men, and they'll all get manual handling training. They know the correct ways and methods to try and avoid musculoskeletal disorders.
Yep, they do. They all get manual handling, and they all get annual assessments for their fitness to undertake the full range of duties for the job.
And I'm also thinking back to the bin men we're rolling out, we're changing the bin trolley system, and I know the trade unions were happy that the trolley recycling system at folks' houses was possibly causing some injuries with twisting, lifting, handling these boxes. So hopefully the new system of bins will prevent some of these injuries. Any other questions, comments? Councillor Canning online, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Amanda. No, anytime we're talking about all this kind of thing, I'm always reminded about Councillor McFadden's intervention at one of the council sessions last year. I mean, have we or should we have a campaign around well women and well man checks? Because in terms of prevention, I think that's so important. And you know, if we're seen to encourage it, so that, because often it's in the private sector, the pressures of work will just mean people will just not do it. They'll only go to the doctors when they need to go to the doctor. So I'm just wondering if there's have we or should we have some sort of campaign to get people, encourage people, even if it means a little bit of time off work, to go and have a you know, a well woman or a well man check. So thanks.
For you, Chair, yes, we do. We do it regularly. We've got monthly wellbeing updates with a number of, we don't always badge them just as well women or well man, so there's stuff that's generic, goes across, but a number of interventions that's available. We do stuff, we do stuff specifically for males and for female health as well, but we've got a full range of activities that people can either undertake, training that they can do, things that they can do online. Referring back to the question about counselling within there as well, there's a significant wealth of resources for individuals to support, and we promote that. We are currently looking at an enhanced communication strategy with employees round about supporting wellbeing and attendance at work as well. But yeah, we promote them currently.
Thank you, Amanda. Is that okay, Councillor Canning? Thank you. Page 220, one of the key points halfway down, the overall number of young people under 25 working within the council is we're 389 young people under the age of 25, and I count 93 of these young people are in apprenticeships. The 23% of the young people are on apprenticeships. I think that's brilliant and something I hope we can continue in future years. it looks like East Ayrshire Council is very much in the leadership as far as the number of apprenticeships we are taking on and training to look forward to brilliant careers in whatever apprenticeship it is they're learning. I think that's great work. Thank you, Amanda, for presenting that part of the report. I believe that ends the East Ayrshire. You want back in, Joe? Thank you.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Its final two sections, complaints and risks, with complaints starting on page 228. It shows that if we take the entire year, 132 complaints received, which is slightly down, very, very slightly down than the previous year. We've got 32 complaints closed during quarter 4. They are as listed at the bottom of page 228. 24 responded to within 24 or 75% responded to within the required timescale. Slight decline in that, but I know from my own service that the complexity of some of the issues that start off as queries that then become complaints can certainly drive that figure quite dramatically. The improvement actions are listed. So for all of those 32 complaints, there was 9 improvement actions listed for roads, education and housing and communities, which shows that it's not just about getting a query and responding to a complaint, but it's reflecting on it itself and changing systems and processes within each service too. The average time taken to respond to complaints, stage 1 was slightly up compared to the same period last year, with stage 2 complaints at 19.7 days, down from 23.6. It shows as well the number of complaints which were upheld or partially upheld, and on to risks at page 230. I don't intend, Chair, to go through each of those. You heard Emma earlier with the 4 new risks. They're included in the risks that are here, but other than that, no new risks added, no changes made. They show the complexity of the risks that the council face on a corporate level. Below that, there are more detailed and different risks sitting in risk registers across every service. But the risks are as noted, they're kept up to date. CMT has reviewed them. And with that, Chair, I'll stop and take any questions, noting that the recommendations for your committee are at paragraph 3 in page 174, which is to note the contents of the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Any questions, members, on how we handle complaints, page 228, 229? Any questions or comments? No? And the risk register, any questions there on the risks, page 230 to 245, and there's risk assessment and matrix and colour there and to guide you which ones are higher risk and lower risk. Any questions or comments? No? Thank you. We'll go back to the recommendations. What are we? Page 173. Elected members as the recommendations. I don't plan to read all these out. There's 26 recommendations that went to Cabinet yesterday. They're not for us. So I'm not going to read all 26 of these recommendations in paragraph 3. The one that matters to us is the one just below those 26, and it's simply to note the contents of the report. You happy with that, elected members? Thank you very much. That ends that item on the agenda, and we move on to the next one, which is derelict, vacant and dangerous buildings, report by the Chief Planning Officer, and Pamela Clifford's not here today. We'll get David Wilson. Thank you, David.
Thanks, Chair, and afternoon, members. This report presents committee with an overview of the derelict and dangerous buildings within East Ayrshire, which either present cause for concern and hence have been subject to the service of a formal notice during 2024-25 under the building standards and or planning legislation, or are subject to regeneration proposals involving the council. As background, members should be aware that it is the responsibility of building and landowners to keep their property from becoming dangerous or untidy such that it is affecting the wider area. The powers of building standards and planning to intervene in such cases are relatively limited and primarily centre around where a building is dangerous to the public or those using them, and where a property is adversely affecting the wider amenity of the area. Where the structural stability of a building is deteriorated to an extent where it is unsafe to persons frequenting the building or to the public in general, the council has mandatory powers to undertake necessary actions to make the building safe under the Building Scotland Act. In respect of derelict buildings, enforcement action is discretionary under the Building Scotland Act and Planning Act and may entail the Council to fund any enforcement work that is not undertaken by the owner. As highlighted at paragraph 3, 13 dangerous building notices were served by Building Standards in the reporting period to make an owner undertake works to return the building to a safe condition. On 3 occasions, direct action has been required, with debt recovery pursued against the owner. 2 notable examples from the reporting period have been listed at paragraphs 6 to 12 for context, including a long-term problematic case at Jameson Road in Darvel, which has required a number of interventions over the last few years, and the former St Xavier's Primary in Waterside, which was significantly damaged by fire. All notices served can be found on the Building Standards Register on the Council's website if you're looking for any more specific details of any individual property. Just for members to note, the web address at paragraph 13 on the papers was incorrect, and there should be a hyphen between East and Ayrshire. Apologies for that error. This has been corrected on the electronic version and on the web page for anyone accessing it from there. In respect of planning, the Council has discretionary powers and may serve a notice on property that is adversely affecting the amenity of the area, often referred to as a wasteland notice, which if not complied with could result in the Council initiating direct action under section 135 of the Act and then seeking to recover costs reasonably incurred. It is noted at paragraph 14 that direct action was instigated in March 2025 at a property in Kilmarnock under a notice served in 2024. Turning now to paragraphs 17 to 24, these set out various plans and groups taking action or working collaboratively towards regeneration and reuse of properties and empty sites. This includes, for example, work with the Empty Homes Collaboration Group, resulting in 16 homes being brought back into use, and ongoing work that will convert the former Trotters building in New Kilmarnock into the New Kilmarnock Reuse Hub. In respect of debt recovery from direct action, paragraphs 26 and 27 highlight some of the challenges in debt recovery with figures provided for costs incurred and recovered during the reporting period. In conclusion, it is noted that most matters in respect of potential derelict or dangerous buildings are resolved by active engagement and discussion by Building Standards and Planning with owners to achieve the desired outcomes. Additionally, grant funding has been used to enable and help various groups and owners with this. In some instances, though, notices under the Building and Planning Acts are necessary to remove danger or to secure improvement. Recommendations are set out paragraph 2, largely to note the powers available and the actions taken by planning, Building Standards and other teams and groups. I'm happy to take any questions that members have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. I'll let the members have any questions or comments on derelict, vacant and dangerous buildings. Councillor Lennox online, you go first. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Chair. Thanks, David. Just referring to page 249, paragraph 14, which states that, well, I'm not going to read it out verbatim, but that's pretty much new information to me. I won't deny that I've probably been told before and it's went in one ear and out the other, so apologies if that's the case, but I find that very interesting, and there's one particular instance where I think this could be appropriated in Muirkirk, and that's the Trotters building in Muirkirk, which is slowly but surely bringing down the amenity of that particular location in the main street. So my question would be that how bad does something need to get before we would initiate this particular portion of the Town and Country Act? Thanks, David, if you could maybe inform me on that, please.
Thanks, Councillor, through you, Chair. It is a matter of judgment, to be honest. We generally judge it against the guidance that we have from the Scottish Government about the kind of examples and the stage that buildings or land would have to get to before serving it. And we also use our judgment, taking into account decisions from the Department for Planning and Environmental Appeals, where if there's been any appeals there, it helps to kind of clarify the type of circumstances and impacts that we would intervene on. But ultimately, it's a matter of judgment. There's lots of buildings that are perhaps in reasonably poor condition. But essentially, under this power, I would say that they have to be in pretty significantly poor condition, to the extent where they're really having a serious detrimental impact on the amenity of the local area before we would look to serve a notice. So each case has in its own merits. We would have to just assess what the impacts are and take into account any other relevant information. So any case is potentially capable of it, but usually in the first instance we try and deal with owners to try and make improvements before proceeding to notices like this. The danger also with a wasteland notice is that the kind of ultimate outcome is the council potentially has to step in and do the works. And some buildings where there's either no ownership or fragmented ownership, it'll be the council that end up covering the costs. And to improve a building, you'd have to be quite specific on what we thought was sufficient to remedy the injury to the amenity. So if it's quite significant steps, there could be quite significant costs if the council has to intervene. So if there's any particular building, we're always happy to have a look at it, make a judgment about what we should do. So if there is one, feel free to get in contact and we can certainly look at that. I'm aware of that building before from building standards being involved in terms of serving notices on it. So it is one I'm aware of, but certainly we can look at it under those powers if that's something that you'd like us to do.
Thanks, David. I think probably, I know these processes doesn't happen, things don't happen overnight, so it might be in my interest and the interest of the community certainly to initiate a formal request in that sense sooner rather than later, and I'll drop you an email on that one. Thank you.
Just 3 quick points, Chair. It's been a long day. Firstly, the word significant was used all round there. It doesn't figure in paragraph 14, but that would be the threshold, that a significant adverse impact. As David said, everything else applies. It's a matter of judgment. And we do look at where others have taken action. We look at what they call the jurisprudence, where the reporter of the DPA have given an opinion on what are and aren't good grounds for wasteland notice. So that's the first point. I would deal with it as a rule of thumb as being a significant adverse impact. Second one is, as I made reference earlier to the briefing note that was prepared that covered all of these matters for MPs and MSPs, which we subsequently have issued since the last election to all of our members. So apologies if that didn't get you, Councillor Lennox, but the information is out there. But we will be relaunching that briefing, as I said, having added in all the information about cars that we discussed earlier in the meeting. I think that was the same meeting. And then the final point was just to say you don't need to send an email, Councillor Lennox. We will now arrange for someone to go out and have a look at that one in particular. It's not that long. It was only a few weeks. I was down in Newcombe myself and I understand what Councillor Lennox is referring to. So on that basis, I think if the enforcement officer the next time he's in the area could go and take a formal look and report back. What did I say? Sorry, Muirkirk, sorry. There's actually, sorry, we'll go and do the Trotters building in Muirkirk because there was issues around the demolition with that at the time that just seems to keep coming up. So we'll go and satisfy ourselves in that one because the situation can change over time. But when they're down there, there's also a site in Newcombe where it seems to have been half demolished and all left lying in the slope. And any time you go down there, it seems to be a worsening position. So I think we can maybe pay a trip to both Muirkirk and Newcombe in the one go and take a position in both of those, and we'll advise the local members after that.
Thank you, David, and Councillor Lennox for the question. I think there's, for elected members, there's frustration with each elected member will have a house or 2 houses or 3 houses in their ward which have been abandoned and left, and although they're not coming to a stage where they're dangerous, they are certainly scruffy. The gardens are overgrown, the bins don't get emptied, and they become a bit of an eyesore and possibly attract vermin, which is not good for their neighbours. Our powers are limited on what we can do where it's not on with the council. I don't know if it needs some kind of change from devolved government or UK government to make these things enforceable so that these houses aren't abandoned and just left to decay slowly, because we have a housing crisis. We have a huge waiting list. We need these houses. It's it's sad, and I know our powers are limited, David. Having said that,
I was just going to say, sorry, Chair, I was just going to say that it's not my field, but I'll make inquiries. But I think there was a review of the compulsory purchase legislation, and I think there may be more scope in the most severe cases to utilise that to purchase single houses, etc., etc. I certainly am aware of one example that I shared with housing colleagues where Glasgow had purported to use that not for a whole area or a whole block, but a particular flat. So there maybe have been some movement in that. So I think it'd be remiss not to highlight that in terms of what you're looking for might actually be there. We need to pick that up with housing colleagues and certainly those colleagues in the empty property unit, etc., and make sure that if that is one of the tools in the box, that colleagues are aware of that, members are aware of that, and in what circumstances that might now be a solution without causing a stampede to housing colleagues' door. But I think there was some movement around the compulsory purchase legislation that might help in those kind of cases, which are kind of beyond the dangerous derelict, but certainly would also overlap with some of the wasteland. If there's no prospect of anyone doing anything and bringing a house back into use, then I just need to get my head round what our position might be as housing authority under revised legislation. But I need to have that conversation with Blair, and then we can agree. And if actually anything needs to go into that note, I'll add that in as well.
thank you very much. If there's... Well, Councillor Canning online has a question. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, David. No, I mean, just very briefly, we only get this report once a year, and I think my constituents would be very surprised if I didn't mention the Institute building in Sturton, but and certainly I don't think you'll find any of my constituents that wouldn't say that it wasn't significantly adversely affecting the amenity, but I understand that the legal thresholds. And I just want to say, I mean, I know Pamela has picked this up recently as well, so I thank planning for looking at it, and obviously Richard's involved as well, so I don't need to discuss it further, but I'm just mentioning it because I think my constituents would certainly be surprised if I didn't mention it. It's only once a year. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Canning. With no other comments, no other questions, we'll end that item on the agenda. Thank you, David, for presenting that report. The next one, I think we're back to you, David. Yes, recommendations. Correct. The recommendations are on page 246. Thank you, Vice Chair, for keeping me right. And it's paragraph 2. We note the statutory legislation. We note the buildings have been subject to complaints and require service of formal notices. We note the actions of the empty homes team and the development plan and regeneration team. So 3 recommendations they are not in the reports. All happy with that, elected members? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Cogley, keeping me right. The next report, item 12 on the agenda, annual review of all planning enforcement and listed building consent appeal decisions and local review body decisions. That's when we're back to David Wilson again. Thank you, David.
Thanks, Chair. The purpose of this report is to present for information an annual analysis of planning, advertisement consent and listed building consent appeal decisions received from the Scottish Government Directorate for Planning and Environmental Appeals, the DPEA, and a summary of the reviews considered by the local review body during the calendar year of 2024. As background, the appeal route for certain applications will be to the Scottish Government and usually be determined by an appointed reporter. These cases are planning applications that have been refused by the Planning Committee, advertisement applications and listed building consent appeals. Where a planning application is determined under delegated powers and refused, the appeals route is to the local review body, which is a panel drawn from councillors on the Planning Committee. In addition, as well as refusals, an applicant can also make an appeal against the terms of a condition imposed on any approval granted, and can also appeal against the non-determination of an application by the planning authority where the statutory target set by legislation for determination has been missed and no agreement on an extended timeframe has been reached. As highlighted at paragraph 3, 3 appeals were determined by the DPA in 2024, all of which were planning appeals. The details of these appeals are all set out at Table 1 and Appendix 1 from page 258 of the papers. It's noted that all of the appeals were dismissed by the reporter, upholding the original decision of the planning authority. Paragraph 4 notes that reporting these decisions back to Planning Committee as a learning and development opportunity has been introduced in 2024. Paragraph 5 highlights that there have been 8 applications determined by local review body in 2024, 7 following refusal of the planning application under delegated powers, and 1 for non-determination within the statutory period. The details of these are set out at Table 2 from page 261 of the papers, noting that 7 of the 8 were dismissed by the LRB and 1 was upheld, overturning the delegated refusal and granting planning permission. Finally, it's highlighted that no awards of expenses were made against the Council during the 2024 period in the appeals to the Scottish Government. Arrangements to minimise the risk of such expenses are touched on in the financial and legal implications section of the report, noting in particular that decisions should be governed by the requirements of the Planning Act in respect to the development plan, and that sound professional advice from within the Council and on occasion expert external consultants is available to inform decision making. The recommendation set out at paragraph 2 to note the annual review and otherwise note the contents of the report, and again happy to take any questions that members may have. Thanks.
Thank you again, David. Elected members, have we any questions or comments on our planning enforcement or LRB decisions? Oh, shy again. No one's saying anything. No questions, no comments? No one online. In that case, we'll go to the recommendations. Yep. Page 254, we've got the recommendations there and paragraph 2. Note the annual review of planning enforcement and listed building consent appeal decisions and local review body decisions for the annual period last year. Otherwise, note the contents of the report. Happy with that, elected members? Thank you. We'll take those recommendations. And thank you, David, for presenting the report. We move on to the next one, item 13. We're getting there. We're getting there. There's only 2 more. Keep going. Outcome of Governance and Scrutiny Committee annual self-assessment. For this one, we've got to David Mitchell.
As always, Chair, keeping the best till last. This is a bit of an odd beast, this one, because quite simply, this is me presenting a report to you which reflects your discussions and considerations in an informal session on the effectiveness of your committee. So you may have heard this before, but keeping it to the headlines, as you know, and as the report says, basically in a previous external audit, and it was the right thing to recommend, they identified that there was opportunity to introduce the annual self-assessment. As the report sets out, we follow the very detailed and slightly prescriptive SIPFA guidance. And we've now carried these assessments out for a number of years since around 2020. You are familiar with the very detailed checklist, and one of the things that you've agreed this time, which I absolutely support, was in terms of keeping things proportionate and realistic, that the future approach will be to do the detailed review of assessment of a effectiveness performance and work through the assessment sheet and use the scoring, etc. And that every other year that would be done on a 2-yearly basis, and in between it would be that lighter touch of just taking a view on whether anything significantly changed in any area since the previous year's assessment. I think you felt and also supported the view that struck the right balance, because although this is only annual, it comes round awful quick. You've carried out a few. There's not much coming out of those in terms of, without anybody being complacent, any great concern about whether we're operating effectively or not. You have the anecdotal evidence, as Joe I think said again today, that external audit love us in common parlance, but they certainly, whether or not they love us, they certainly hold in high regard the governance arrangements we have in place in this council and hold them up to others. So I don't think we take false comfort when we do these reviews that we have actually got a reasonably good handle on how to conduct the business of the committee. The self-assessment reflected that we had the separate consideration last November on training needs, and we had a session on that last week in meeting those identified needs. And you also identified certain workshop scrutiny topics for a deeper dive. And as you've heard again today, arrangements are in place for the first of those to commence in September. So, you know, in the round, you have dealt with things. You had an action plan from last year. You've reviewed that and effectively agreed that a lot of these are recurring good practice, so we'll keep doing them. And you've also agreed to note that although we've arrangements in place to get feedback from members, officers and members of the public, I think within the official reporting period we only get one from a member of the public, although there was a second one that came in just after that period that wasn't particularly helpful, to be honest. So we've agreed as well, we'll continue with that, and we're open to any ideas and suggestions or improvements about how we can better capture that reaction to the work of the committee. But I think it's a truism that out with the members of the committee itself and those who regularly appear before it and present reports and gives advice and support, that it's not an area of wider interest to the wider community. I think they're all too busy getting on doing their jobs rather than worrying about being scrutinised about it. So what the report summarises is the output from the last session. I believe it captures everything you agreed, but probably better to stop now and for you to tell me if that's the case or not. If there's anything I've not explained, I'm happy to try and clarify it. Otherwise, what you have is a set of decisions that will inform your future approach.
Thank you, David. Elected members, it's a bit strange. It's a report about us and about our own self-assessment and how we're doing and the areas where we can, if possible, improve how we operate. I'm happy to take questions or comments or direct them to Joe or David. Any questions, any comments?
No.
You're right.
All good. All good.
We're all good. Did you have anything else, David, that completes that report?
No, not in that one, Chair, if you're happy with the recommendations.
Right, we'll go to the recommendations then, which is on page 269, paragraph 2. It's recommended that members note the outcome of the annual self-assessment ESA. Yep. Note the updated ESA action plan. Agree going forward the approach undertaking annual self-assessment over alternate years. So we'll do a quick self-assessment 1 year and a more thorough self-assessment the next year. Continue the improvement going forward. Further enhancements to have identified. Agree to receive a report from David, Chief Governance Officer, early in 26. Otherwise, note the contents of the report. Happy with that, elected members? I think we're doing a decent job. You're a good bunch, and the self-assessment is sort of showing that to us. Thank you. We'll move on to the next item, the final item. At last, awarding of contracts period from 21st February to 22nd May, and we're back to Legal and Governance. David Mitchell.
Thanks. Again, I'll keep it short. As members know, this is one of my favourite reports, not just because it's simple, but because it absolutely gives any reader an instant indication of the width and depth of the whole range and variety of services and activities that your council undertakes to meet the needs of its communities. You can see everything that we have to build, maintain, repair, refurbish, everything we have to buy and procure in terms of goods, materials and supplies. And it's only when you see it in all in one place in that wide range of everything that we actually do that I think you get that real practical understanding of exactly all that is expected of councils and all that we are here and created to deliver. So with that in mind, if there's any particular queries about any particular contracts, but as you know, the purpose of bringing them here is to let members and the public see in an open and transparent manner exactly what business we're doing, who we're doing it with, and who else is getting the opportunity to bid, and the basis of the decisions on which we award the contracts. The reason I like this is we have nothing to hide as a procuring authority. We'll tell everybody everything in terms of how we do the business, and this is the antidote to these repeated accusations and perceptions of brown envelopes that still manifest themselves on a weekly basis and which have no place here. without being either naive or complacent. Our arrangements are such, there's no real scope for that in terms of how we sign these off. And the assurance you have is every single contract in there is signed off by me on behalf of the council. So hopefully that gives members some assurance. And after a fairly long session, happy to leave it there, Chair.
Thank you, David. And it's the last one. It's page 285 to 294, awarding of contracts. Any questions or comments? You're all tired. Everybody's happy, I think. Councillor Todd, did you want in? Have a go, Councillor Todd.
Thank you very much, Convener. Thanks, David. And it's very timious that we're talking early on with audit. That's very, very important. And we're very lucky to have that team. Very lucky to have David and his team. Because when you leave here, please have a wee look at the news that just come out about Ayrshire and Health Board, and some very good auditing going on in there. And there's been convictions today on procurement. And so you're leaving us in good hands, and we're very, very comfortable with where we sit with everything you guys do. Thank you.
I don't want to steal Councillor Watt's thunder, or indeed Councillor Keller, any of the members from the South, but I think that was fully reported in the Cumnock Chronicle, if it's the same case, where the 2 in the Health Board and 2 in another company. So there's 4 convictions for basically contracts to friends, etc., and backhanders, and somebody bought a nice house in Newton Mearns in the back of that. So I think I'll have a look, Councillor Todd, but I think that one is known, and I think they were all convicted. I suspect they were maybe sentenced today. I think the convictions were about 3 weeks ago. The Chronicle definitely had a double-page spread for the interest, because it was Lanarkshire Health Board, but it was also, as you say, Ayrshire Health Board, and a couple of folk out with been up to the naughties. It was all fairly basic, unsophisticated stuff that was always likely to be found out. They just didn't follow procedures and didn't, in one case, I think, expose it to tender. So the paper trail would always have led to them being caught on investigation. But if it's that one, then we're certainly cited in that. And if it's not, Councillor Todd, I'll go and have a look at that one as well.
Thank you, David. Any other questions or comments, elected members? It's item 14, the last one on the agenda. The recommendation is on page 285, and it's simple. The committee is asked to note the contracts awarded during the period in question, and the details are there. If you have any questions, you can get back to David Mitchell, and he'll give you any detail if you've one particular item. Thank you very much for your attendance today. It's been a long one. Well done.
Chair,
well done.
Actually, sorry, sorry, Chair, if you would indulge me, I will be writing out to members, but this is probably in the back of that last piece, just to take the opportunity for any member that's received anonymous correspondence from somebody purporting to be, who may well be a member of staff, regarding allegations in respect of one of our housing contractors. The allegation's been made that the contractors unilaterally changed the window spec. I know some councils have had this, and I know it went into certainly one of the Ward 1 members yesterday. I know Councillor Linda Mabin spoke to me about it. Councillor Jim McMahon spoke to me about it. It was just to say I will be writing out, but if anyone else has received that correspondence which suggests the suppliers unilaterally changed the windows and they're substandard, then there are 2 parts to that. One, we challenged the contractor on his original performance, because his model was he was getting the windows supplied and his own men were fitting them. We had a number of quality issues. We challenged the contractor on the quality of the work. His response was actually to change the model, and he went from buying the glass and having his men install the windows to a model whereby you get a subcontractor to both supply and install, hence the change of glass. So factually accurate, but the change was made through the normal contractual process, and it was agreed variation, and the council signed off on that. And since the anonymous complaint was made, we have done a random check on one of the sites and can absolutely assure all members, and I will be writing out anyway, but we might as well take the opportunity, that the glass is still meeting all safety standards, and indeed the glass change occurred with our approval through the contractor's response to us raising performance issues with the contractor. So all above board, but if you've had the anonymous letter, you will see it's again suggested otherwise, and brown envelopes make a mention. There's a lot more to that one, but this is public session, so I'll leave it at that. But I will now be right now to all members to offer that assurance and to advise that the contract documentation is there for anyone that wishes to inspect it.
Thank you very much, David.
Thank you.
Thank you for your attendance, members. The meeting is now closed. We can end recording. Thank you.